And we are live. Welcome back to MicroConf On Air. I'm your host, Rob Walling. Every other Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, we live stream for about 30 minutes, and we cover topics related to building and growing ambitious SaaS startups that bring us freedom and purpose and allow us to maintain healthy relationships. We love live streaming because we can get live feedback, live questions from you, the audience. So if you are in MicroConf Connect, head to the MicroConf On Air channel. If you're watching directly on YouTube, there is a chat function, I think, over on the right-hand side, and producer Xander will be monitoring those, placing them here in our doc. Today, we're going to be talking not about the amazing MicroConf talk that's called The Survival Guide for Bootstrap SaaS. We're going to be talking about the updated Survival Guide for Bootstrapping SaaS, because I am pleased to be joined today by Omar Zenhom. He's the founder of WebinarNinja, and he did this talk back at MicroConf in 2019 about the story of building and growing WebinarNinja. So if you don't know, Omar is the co-founder of WebinarNinja. As I just said, he's a super simple online teaching, coaching, and marketing platform. He started it in 2014, and since then, over 2 million people have attended workshops and other events on WebinarNinja. WebinarNinja remains a self-funded software company with over 20,000 stakeholders, which are their customers. He's also the host of the popular small business podcast, the $100 MBA Show. He's been featured in Inc., Forbes, Fast Company, Entrepreneur, Product Hunt, numerous other small business podcasts. So with that, I'd like to welcome Omar to the show. Thanks for joining me, sir.
Hey, Rob. It's good to see you again.
It's great to have you. So your talk was the full title, MicroConf Start of 2019, From 1 to 14,000 Customers, the Survival Guide to Bootstrap SaaS. And we wanted to bring you here on, and if you want to watch the show, if you want to watch that talk, head to youtube.com/microconf, or we're going to have the audio of that talk going in live in the MicroConf podcast today or tomorrow. So folks can check it out. I actually rewatched the talk last week to prepare for this, and I think we have some good stuff to get into today. The first thing I want to ask about is, it's been almost 3 years since you talked. So knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently when you launched WebinarNinja back in 2014?
Wow. That's a good question.
Good one, but a hard one.
Yeah, I think when I launched WebinarNinja, I was just scratching my own itch, really. I loved running webinars. I'm a former educator, taught in the classroom for 13 years before I became a full-time entrepreneur. So I was really attracted to webinars and the platform of teaching, really. And I was really not. I kind of just saw it as like a project, or basically almost like I was like building my own website kind of situation. It wasn't even, I didn't think of it as a business. I didn't think of, what are the next steps? I didn't really see the vision of what does this look like in 5-10 years. I didn't do a SWOT analysis. I just basically went out there and just created something I wanted to see in the world. And bad habits die hard. So if you don't really have that, habit of, hey, what does this look like at the end of the year, and 3 years, and 5 years, and 10 years? What are some of the resources I'm going to need to be able to go where I want? How sustainable it is right now with the current growth or the current traffic I'm getting to my site. It was just kind of because I was just looking at the first step ahead of me, like, okay, build this tool and put it in front of people, see what happens. Okay, when I see what happens, I'll react. And then you just, one day leads to 1 week to 1 month to 1 year, and then you realize, oh man, it's been 4 years. I need to think about, what does this mean for my life? My co-founder Nicole and I, who's also my wife, we talk all the time about how time flies by, and we just realized, this April it's going to be 8 years of WebinarNinja. So it's like, wow. We have the gray hairs to show for it. But I would probably say that is just that forward thinking and thinking more than one move ahead. No one plays chess and just thinks the first move. You think, at least 5 or 6 moves ahead before you move the pieces.
And, on that note, how do you manage growth projections these days and goal setting?
I think the best way to what I found has been helpful is just to come up with a few different scenarios. Like if this happens, if this is my growth rate, then this is what I'm going to do with that growth. This is how I'll react to that. These are the type of things I'm going to need. These are kind of the people I'm going to need to hire. Um, if that rate looks like this, if that rate looks like that. So it just gives me a few options to look at, so that and I usually have like an extreme option, like what if we grow, 300%, which happened in COVID. So we're like, okay, what does that look like? So that at least allows me to not freak out when something happens. I kind of played that episode in my head already, so it gives me a chance to kind of, um, you know, live the reality a little bit in my mind before it actually happens in real life.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So I want to ask a question about COVID and how it impacted Webinar Ninja. Given the industry you're in, did you see increased demand as COVID cranked up in 2020?
Yeah, COVID was an interesting experience for us as a company, because we saw incredible demand, and I would say our customer demographic really changed big time. Like who we serve now is totally different than who we served,
Hmm.
when I gave that talk in 2019. Because COVID kind of opened the floodgates. It kind of just almost like fast forwarded to the future, almost like, um, and we got customers emailing us, telling us, like, listen, I can't do my karate studio anymore. They got to close the doors. How am I going to do my karate studio? Can your software help me? Can I do my karate classes with webinars? And so I went from a customer that's really well versed in technology, in the space, knows what a webinar is, knows how to utilize it, maybe kind of been on a few webinars, to somebody who their business is a brick and mortar, or their business doesn't even have a website, so it's like it's a little bit of a different demographic, uh, along with the fact that we started to shift a little bit, because we were really competing in a space of using webinars as a marketing tool, which is how a lot of people use webinars. But we started to really differentiate with just focusing on being more of a teaching and learning tool, so people actually use our software to deliver their product or service, or deliver some sort of workshop to bring in their audience and things like that. So I think the biggest challenge for us as a company was realizing, oh, who we were going after in terms of marketing, our messaging, our website, that's not our customer anymore. We need to like speak to some customers. So we would get on the calls, and we would take notes, and we would transcribe those videos, and we realized, oh, okay, most of our customers are solopreneurs, or people that are running their business by themselves. If they have a team, it's like two other people, and it's like family members, right? And we realize, okay, we need to double down on the idea that our software is super simple to use, because they don't have the resources to really get an expert, or train somebody, or really work with an onboarding expert on our team and things like that. So it really shifted the way we presented, or I would say positioned our product, as well as just the whole team, from engineering to support, understanding, okay, this is really our customer now. And of course, there's variations, but it definitely changed a lot in COVID.
Yeah, I can imagine that was a massive mindset shift and must have been pretty challenging, because I imagine, and you may have gotten there first. I know often as the founder, you're getting these streams of data and you're thinking, there's a shift happening in this company. Then oftentimes your team doesn't know that. And you have to then kind of convince them with data. I mean, what was that process hard? Did you just one day say, hey, this is what we're doing? Or were other people seeing the tea leaves as well?
One of the things that really was helpful is that I do member webinars. I still run our member webinars till today, like where I once a month I'll get on the webinar, and I answer questions. I talk about what's coming up next in our feature releases, all that kind of stuff. And I started to we have like a questions area, and you can export that those questions to CSV, right? And I would start to notice the questions that were coming in, and they're very different than they used to be. Like things like, um, do I need to have an email with my URL in it? Like, do I need to get an LLC, or should I just be a freelancer? Things like that. Questions that are very like, oh, these people are still at a stage that they're not where our customers used to be. Like our
Yeah.
customers used to be very savvy and very like, I'm just running webinars so I can have another growth hack. So I started to realize, okay, this is not a one-off. Like every month, this is happening, and most of the questions are very at a different stage. A lot of it were like just general, like very basic technology questions, like what's a webcam I can use that's not my laptop, things like that. So then I started to export these questions. We would share them with our customer support team first, because we're like, hey, these are the type of questions we're getting. Are you seeing the same in your customer support chats and your messages? And I would speak to CJ, who's our customer service manager, and she would confer. And then I would go ahead and we would talk to the CTO, our CTO, and be like, okay, like we need to start thinking about shifting our roadmap really to cater to this type of customer, because their needs and their wants and what they're asking for are totally different. And we started to realize that people want more of an all-inclusive, all-in-one software it may not have all the features of our competitors, or may not be able to, host 10,000 people, but they're never going to get 10,000 people. Like that's not their jam. They really have smaller groups, smaller workshops, things like that. So it was just interesting just to share. It's so much easier just to share actual words from the customer than for me to say, trust me, this is what they're saying. And we also, in our team retreat, we try to do a bit of uh, get everybody on support tickets, even like, the engineers and marketing. And they started to realize, okay, I mean, one of our front end engineers who's from Belarus, um, bless his heart, is a beautiful man. But he just put it simply in his English and said, wow, these guys, they just want to press a button and that's it. It's over. I was like, yeah, exactly. That's what they want. They want to press a button, do it for me.
Yeah.
So that's how it was. Yeah.
That's a big shift. Yeah. And I imagine with that shift, there's this mental shift and there's this directional shift. Were there any changes that you made to your company structure as the pandemic hit, and then as this whole kind of pivot-ish expand? It's like a pivot, but it's almost an expansion of the customer base. But any team structure or company structure changes?
Yeah, we basically were in a rush to hire. So because we realized we need to get more engineers, we need to get more customer support agents, we needed to expand our marketing team, because we were not really doing any kind of real market research. I was like, oh, I know the customer. I am the customer. Like, no, I'm so much in the weeds. I'm the worst person to ask about what's best for the customer right now. But uh, so that was a big challenge for me personally, is that we had to make some really quick hires, as fast as possible in a short period of time, and making these decisions can really be costly, right? Especially if you're making positions, hiring positions in a managerial position, people that are making decisions on a daily basis that will affect the trajectory of your business. And I think I just in the process, I, I put a lot of trust in the people we hired based on referrals and references, and people like recommending them and things like that. Like, oh, this person is going to be great. We have no problem. And realize, oh, okay, like, you know, these are some big mistakes that are happening here that, cost us, hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes, and just
Wow.
like, okay, wow, this is tough, because you want to meet the demand, but at the same time, one of our reasons we were able to bootstrap our business is that we're very, very frugal and very methodical and very resourceful. And if you bring in new people and they don't know that, and they come in with whatever they're used to in their other company, it's kind of like, oh wait, we're gonna we're gonna have a problem here very soon, because we're not singing from the same song sheet here. So that was a big challenge for us, big time.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that comes back to like, it's something I think we start our own companies to not have to deal with mission, vision, and values, right? Because there was such bullshit at the other companies I worked at. They would have them on a plaque, and no one really cared or said them. But there comes a time when your team hits a certain size, especially as you're bringing in new hires, where you're no longer communicating your mission, vision, values through osmosis, and you have to do it deliberately, right? I mean, and is that whether it's mission, vision, values, or whether it's some document, that somehow captures this is who we are, this is how we think about things. One of them is frugality for you. It sounds like we're self-funded company, and I imagine it's like we spend money when we need to, but we're also quite frugal. And if that wasn't written down anywhere, then someone comes in, having been working for, corporate headquarters for Target for decades, had all this budget. Suddenly it's like you get a mismatch, right? How did you write that?
Well, one of the things that I learned from my teaching days as a teacher in the classroom is really this whole mission, vision, and values, and just like it kind of glosses over most people in orientation. What we like to do instead is we kind of give examples, and they're kind of like classroom rules. I know that sounds strange, but they're kind of like classroom rules, and the reason why we do that is because if you remember back in grade school, really the rules are what you can get away with. Really, that's what it is. Like if the teacher says there's no talking during the exam, and a student starts talking during an exam, the real rule is that you can talk during the exam, right? Mm-hmm. That's the rule. Mm-hmm. If the teachers, puts them aside and said, "Hey, you're going to sit here now." Now we know, okay, that rule is real, right? So we realize that if we're going to have some sort of set of things that we all believe in, some sort of values, we have to uphold them in some way, and they can't be too many, right? They have to be pretty core values, 3 or 4 or 5 max. But most importantly, I can't police them, or I can't enforce these values, or I can't uphold these values and make sure that when people don't do these things, that we have a chat by myself. I had to make sure that, our management level, all understood that, hey, this is what we do when somebody doesn't do this, or somebody doesn't understand this, or needs to be taught, or needs to be coached through this. And then what happens if they continue to do this, all that kind of stuff. Because otherwise, what happens is that, you do an all hands, you do a retreat, that's when you revisit your values, and then everybody kind of, snickers at it, because it's like, oh, not really, so that's what I was trying to prevent. And one of the things that happened in that process when we were growing rapidly during COVID is that we were hiring quickly, but we also had to fire a bunch of people that have been with us for years. Wow. And the reason why is because one of our our values is growth, is a growth mindset, not only in terms of the company, but in terms of all of us as individuals. Because what happens is that the company starts to grow, the company starts to change, how we work changes, we level up our procedures and how we do things and how we run our meetings, and people don't sometimes connect with that. Sometimes they resist that. They're like, I like the way things used to be, and sometimes when people don't come along with the ride, don't grow with us, we had to kind of have a chat with them and say, this is not working out. Like, I need you to change. I need you to grow with me. It's painful for me too, by the way, as the founder. Like, it's hard for me to say, I'm not good enough. I need to change. I need to get better if I want to get to where I'm going. Like, I'm not the CEO of the company I see in 5 years. I need to get there. So it was heartbreaking. And also part of that, change and growth and new people coming in and people leaving is like, talking to the team on a daily basis, PMs and in Slack and things like that, saying, hey, how you doing? Because it does shake morale a little bit when somebody who's been in the company for 5 years, 6 years leaves, and they're like, oh, am I next? Is this how it's going to be? Because, they're growing. So it's really a soft skill people person challenge that I didn't expect.
Yeah, that's really tough. Reminder to folks watching, we have listener questions coming in, and you can post them in MicroConf on air or in the YouTube comments. The first question is from Zach on YouTube, and he says, if you were to start a business in 2022, would you still bootstrap it, or would you be open to bootstrapper-friendly capital like Tiny Seed? I did not plant this question. And what's your thought process behind it?
Full disclosure, my thoughts, my opinions on bootstrapping has changed drastically over the course of the almost 8 years now with WebinarNinja. I used to be super gung ho. Bootstrap is the way. Have full control. This is your business. This is why you got into it in the first place. That changed a bit as you realize that is not the answer for every stage of your business. That is not the answer for every business. Every business needs something different. And I'm not too proud to say I do recommend people to look at options like Tiny Seed. I remember when I learned about Tiny Seed in MicroConf, I was like, this is a brilliant idea. Like, because one, you don't realize how much strain bootstrapping a business has on your personal life, on your personal relationships, on your partnership or your marriage with whoever you're with. My business partner is my wife, so there's double pressure that we have on us. There's so much of our personal capital that got invested into this company, and it's almost like you're like a gambling junkie. You're like, I got to go all in now because everything is on the line and blah blah blah. But I do think this is actually a pretty good option because at least it frees you up to say, hey, I have some capital to get started. I have some, even if you're not just getting started, even if you are ramen profitable, even if you have product market fit and you want to get some, a boost in cash so you can make some hires, so you can grow your team, invest in marketing. This is a great option because one, it's not a bad thing that you have a partner. It's not a bad thing that you have somebody who's going to take a slice in your business in exchange for you to go to the next level. It's kind of like that whole thing. Do you want, do you want a bite out of do you want a slice out of a watermelon or a grape? Your business has the potential to grow much bigger, not only in terms of the investment, but the know-how and the help and the guidance you're going to get from an investor or from a company or an organization like Tiny Seed. So I've shifted a lot of bit over the years because it's really hard to be creative and to think clearly when you have the ceiling falling down on you. And that's how bootstrap businesses are for the most part. You're constantly like taping up this and doing that and making sure you're trying to survive, and at the same time meeting demand and growing. And it's hard to be creative in that environment. It's hard to really come up with innovative solutions. So having the at least the financial piece taken care of and helping you out and giving you some oxygen is something I would do it. If I did it all over again, I would do it.
It's interesting to hear you say that because I didn't know, what your answer is. And your answer could also have been, hey, I'm a bootstrapper and that's what I do. And that's okay, But I started Tiny Seed because I wished I had been able to do this 10 years ago, when I was grinding it out with Hittail and grinding it out with Drip. And to the same thing, to your point, it's really hard to be thinking about quality of life and growing the business when I'm like, can I make the bills this month, right? Or I'm working 40-hour day job, 20-hour-a-week nights and weekends, which is what I did for years. And I would really wish that there had been some other option. It doesn't have to be Tiny Seeds. You can raise a little bit of money. Bootstrapping, mostly bootstrapping, it's just a tool. Funding is a tool, and know what you're getting into with it, and use it as a tool to grow your business. More listener questions pouring in. Mujad on YouTube says, I'm also just starting on a bootstrapped company with my spouse. Anything you would tell yourself back then? Ooh, I like that question.
Yeah. Definitely have a discussion about responsibilities and roles. And one of the things Nicole and I always do is we like to start the conversation that it's really hard to separate your personal life from business because you're not talking to a different person. You're talking to your wife, right? You're talking to your partner in life, whoever it is. So we always understand that, hey, you have a responsibility, I have a responsibility. Let's work together to get to where we want to go in the business. But at the same time, you have to recognize that your relationship is really the most important thing here. You can start another business, you can get another job, you can invest in another opportunity. It's really hard to find another partner in life that's going to support you and be part of you, a part of your life and part of your journey. So just keep that in mind. I would say, and also it's one of the advantages, I think, is I think it's like some sort of divine intervention. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's almost never that we're both down at the same time. Like I'll have a bad day, or I'll be like, "Oh, why did we start this thing in the first place? What's going on here? I'm dealing with all these problems and these issues, and I got to put out these fires." And then she'll be up and she'll be like, "We could do this. Don't worry. We've handled this before, da, 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 da." And then vice versa some other time. And that's really a blessing. That's really something that like I don't take for granted, because it is hard to run a business by yourself, and to have somebody who cares about you, to have somebody that has your best interest in mind, that you don't have to question their motives all the time about why they're saying this and all that kind of stuff is really good, and really cool.
That's great advice. Good to hear. I'm curious, you mentioned that your team made a lot of changes. There were a lot of changes that went on over the past few years. So let's say between when you did this talk that we're talking about in 2019 versus today, what is your team structure like today? I guess describe, size and how you structure it.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say that probably around the time of the talk, I would say the majority of the team would report directly to me or Nicole. And that was really hard. The funny thing is, after MicroConf, we were going to Europe for a short holiday. It was like not even a week, maybe a week. I don't know. But like, I couldn't shut off. I could not actually have a full day without looking at my phone or putting out fires or answering questions or whatever it is. And at that moment, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I haven't had a vacation since I left teaching, which was 2012. And I'm all for hard work. I'm all for giving it all you can. But is it Jason Fried that says, like, I'm interested in having a stay up and not a startup? Like, just have, in order for me to continue going for the rest of my life, I need to pace myself. I ran long distance track when I was in high school, and that's something that you learn very quickly, is like, you need to understand how much left you have to go still. And for most of us, you have more to go than you already had, have endured so far. So that was a big learning. So we started to realize, okay, how can we first of all get the right people in place, so that the most labor intensive, question intensive type of things are taken care of. And most of us think of like these big hires. I'm gonna need a CTO, I'm a CEO, I need a this VP of this and VP of that. And actually, the first thing is that we just got a really good EA. We got a really good person who basically became the head of HR. She took care of all the stuff in terms of like leave and scheduling and emails and send me your bio and all the things that these little tasks that take up all your time. What Dan Martell calls $10 tasks, right? All these little $10 tasks. And that kind of just gave us some breathing room. Be like, you can't go directly to me for everything. You have to go through our executive assistant, who will probably help you much faster and better than we will, because we are doing a million things. So this person is just dedicated to answer these little small admin questions. From that point on, when we got a taste of that, we're like, oh wow, okay, what else can we do in terms of like bigger decisions? So we brought on a full-time CTO, and that was a great decision that we had, because somebody who was able to kind of take ownership of all the engineering and product decisions and hires and who's going to get hired next and vetting CVs and all that kind of stuff that takes all your time. Okay, great. That was taken care of. We promoted somebody in customer support to somebody to take care of all of customer support and manage people. Then we made another promotion that helped train the team. So somebody who's really versed in the knowledge of the product became somebody who trained the rest of the team members. We invested in QA big time, and that was an internal hire as well. Somebody who was in support, was really interested in getting into the engineering team, and made that shift. And that also was another buffer between me and the engineers and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying it's perfect right now, but it's a whole lot better. We still need to make a few hires to free up my time. Somebody I really highly admire and listen to a lot is is Ayman Abdullah, who was the president of AppSumo for a very long time. And he's taught me a lot about like, hey, he has this analogy of like the camp manager. He doesn't actually build the tents. He has his coffee mug in his hand, and he tells people, hey, do this next step, do this next step, right? And so always think about this idea of having a mug in your hand and try to delegate as much as possible and not actually do the work. He actually encourages me and Nicole to be allergic to work. Try to be allergic to work, which is very hard as a bootstrap founder, because that's how you got where you are, is working. But then you realize, okay, I need to empower other people so that I can have a life.
Yeah. That, if you don't grow a company to the size that you have grown it, you don't run into these speed bumps, I call them, right? It's things that you hit and they feel like roadblocks at the time. Well, you can't take a vacation. Like, that's terrible, but you get into it, you figure it out. I mean, this is what being an entrepreneur, so much of it is just troubleshooting and creativity,
I just want to say one thing about that, because I know that I heard this advice when I was in my first few years of bootstrapping, and I said, this sounds great, but I don't have the budget to hire anybody. Right? I can't hire. I don't have any extra money laying around even to hire an EA. And my answer to myself back then, and to anybody who's asking that or thinking that right now, is ask yourself, how can you afford it? How can you carve out X amount of dollars a month to pay for that next position? Don't think about all the positions right now. Just think about that next position, if it's as EA or whoever it is. And it could be launching a new product. It could be increasing your pricing. It could be adding some, expansion revenue, some premium support, whatever. But don't just say, I can't afford it. How can you afford it is really what you need to find out, because the alternative is not sustainable, right?
That's right. That's right. Run an annual special and sell a bunch of annual plans, right? No, this is a mindset shift that I had as well, where I would come up with ideas that would solve a problem, and then I would figure out excuses why I couldn't implement those ideas. And what you're saying is just get rid of the excuse. How can I, instead of I can't. So as we're heading towards time, I have, I think, one more question for you, and it's about the future. Since you're steeped in webinars and streaming technology and all that, like, when you look ahead 3 years, 5 years, where do you see the webinar landscape heading?
Yeah, so we've already explored this idea, and we're already moving in that direction, a different direction. We're still very much into live teaching, live learning with webinars. But one of the things that we've learned from our customers, we'd get on calls and chat with them and figure out, like, what are they doing? And I was really interested in like what they actually sell. And most of them were kind of Frankensteining a lot of different software together to run their cohorted live courses. So they would, for example, have a landing page on Lead Pages, and then they would have a payment processor, some sort of cart like Sam Cart or something like that. These are all great products, by the way, right? And then they would have Zoom so they can do the actual session, and then they would have some sort of membership software like Teachable or something like that, so they can take the recording from the Zoom and put it in the Teachable, and then give the student access to that. And so they have like a whole bunch of things moving around so they can run these live cohorted courses. These are like 7-week courses on accounting or something like that. And they're all live, and there's handouts and people show up and things like that. And there's been a shift big time in terms of live cohorted courses recently because of completion rates. Of course, COVID pushes everything, but also just people love the community aspect of growing together with another cohort. So what we learned from our customers is that there's all these little potholes in this system. For example, they're running a coaching program and somebody stops paying their fee, and they're like, hey, this is not for me anymore. They still have all the invites and the links from Zoom, so they can actually attend if they wanted to. They can disconnect them from Teachable, but they have to also disconnect them from the billing, and it's actually too much for somebody who's running their business by themselves, you know. So we realized, well, we already do all this stuff with WebinarNinja, but we just do single sessions. We don't, so we've already kind of announced this with our own members. We've have a courses module that's really just dedicated to live cohorted courses, which will allow people to have their students sign up, have their own little portal and dashboard where they can go directly inside to go to the live session, and also watch the replay automatically when it's over. Watch that and see that. We're really bullish on online learning in the future, and especially live online learning. But we also perceive that there's going to be a lot of hybrid type of live and recorded. So like do a bit of homework and then come in once a week and meet with your instructor or with your group and do some project together. So, when I started in webinars, it was large live events, 100, 200, 300 people, 1,000 people going to your webinar and people selling product and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's now changed to more of smaller groups, but more focused, more intense, more value type of things. And for us, our customers, when we kind of beta ID'd it, we basically said, "Hey, would you think of this idea?" And we kind of did some mock-ups and some demos. They realized, "Oh, this is great. Then I could just sell my course with WebinarNinja directly, and then be able to give access to my customers in one place." So that was an epiphany for us to realize, okay, we can solve another problem for our customers that they're really going through.
So it sounds like bundling. You think that a lot more tools will be bundling additional functionality
Yeah.
in that model. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. All right. So one last question before I let you go. What's the most surprising thing you've learned to date running WebinarNinja? It's a hard question, I know, when I ask for one, but
I would say the most surprising thing, the thing that caught me by surprise, was how much I had to change as a person. Like, I didn't know how much personal growth is involved to be able to grow a company. Like, I thought it was like, okay, you got to learn, you got to know the strategies, you got to read the right books, maybe listen to some interviews. No, like, I don't recognize the person that I was 4 years ago. Like, you have to change your habits, who you are, the way you think, your beliefs. Like even just that small thing with bootstrapping, like you question your beliefs. Is that really a great idea for everybody? Is that a great idea for you? Maybe, you need to be able to switch your values and the way you think so that you can survive as a business. And it's just, one of the things I learned from the biography Shoe Dog, which is Phil Knight's memoir, is how much he had to evolve, how much he had to change, how much crap he had to go through to get to where he was. And I see that in myself too. And that was the most surprising thing for me, is like how much you have to evolve as a person.
It's a great answer, sir. Thanks so much for joining me on MicroConf On Air today. If folks want to follow you, you are the Omar Zenhom on Twitter. Thanks again, sir.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. And as we head out, I want to remind you that MicroConf Mastermind applications close this Friday. Head to microconfmasterminds.com if you want to be paired up with other like-minded individuals at similar stages to you. And we have done more than 600 matches over the past, I think, 18 months since we've been doing this. More than 150 million in ARR of companies, founders who have matched. So whether you're just getting started, whether you're doing north of $1 million, we have other folks who we can match you with. And as always, thank you to Hey and Stripe for being our headline partners. They have been longtime supporters of MicroConf, and they continue to be through 2022. Thanks again for joining me here, and I'll see you again at same time, same place in 2 weeks.